Welcome to Behind the Model, a show diving into the virtual world and exploring its stories with the VTubers who lead the way. Chances are, if you started out in VTubing in the last couple of years, you've watched a Syafire tutorial or few. She's arguably the face of virtual educational content, helping rookies and veterans alike fully utilize the medium's quirks and charms. However, behind the tutorials is a person with quite the fascinating journey to this point, and that's what we're here to learn about today. Syafire, welcome to Behind the Model.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. That was a beautiful intro. I don't even know if I could intro myself that beautifully worded. Thank you.
I mean, I get paid to write, so that's what I like to say at the end of the day.
He's good at what he does. That's right. That's awesome.
But I do also resonate with that intro because as someone who started out in VTubing in the last couple of years, I definitely relied on your tutorials to like calibrate my model and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very well versed with your work.
Oh, that's so awesome. Do you remember the first video you watched of mine by any chance?
The first video that I watched of yours, I remember it was using OBS Virtual Cam for collabs and like figuring all that stuff
Sweet.
out because I used that video to bring it full circle to do my first few recordings of Behind the Model. So that was how I
Oh,
set
that's
up
so
all the
sweet.
first episodes before I had VNet because I was still just a PNG tuber back then.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because we didn't have VNet before. And now VNet
Yep.
it makes it a lot more simpler. You're
Yeah.
a 2D mod or VTuber.
Yeah. VNet was out, but I didn't have my rigged model yet. So
Yeah.
I like the first, you can go back and look, the first 6 episodes of this series, they're all with my PNG, my very cute drawn PNG, but now we get to play around in VNet and like it looks all very fancy and high quality now. It's so amazing how far it's come.
My gosh, it's so cool too. I'm really happy that you started to, despite not having a fully animated model yet, starting the PNG route. That's great to hear.
Yeah. And like your content says, so many different parts of VTubing. And we'll get all the way to that. I do want to ask like one question right at the top though. And it comes from when I first reached out to you. Your Discord status at the time read out with a very wonderful sentiment. I'm going to read it back. So it said, in this era, with all the opportunity we have, it's not enough to just want it. You have to go and do it. And I just want to ask you, how much does that resonate with you as a person, with your journey through content creation, etc.?
Oh my gosh. So actually, funnily enough, I did an interview a little bit earlier today, and they were asking me, what do I think the hardest part about being a creative is? And I said, the motivation to start. People have a lot of ideas and of what they want to do, but then finding the motivation to actually go do it and not just talk about it is kind of the next step in the next journey. So I feel that quote really connects and relates back to just following what you want to do and actually going to do it, actually putting the first step down on paper, and kind of like with your videos, how you started as a PNG tuber and you weren't like, oh, I have to wait until I have a refined model. You just started with what you had. So I think it really resonates back to starting with what you have and not just talking about it. Actually get out there, go there and do it. And I always say done is better than perfect. You don't have to be
Yep.
perfect. In fact, it probably won't be even close to perfect, but if something is worth doing, there's actually a quote that's if there's something that's worth doing, that it's worth doing well, but I actually like it the other way around. If there's something worth doing, it's actually worth doing poorly at first, starting messy so that you can refine it and get better.
How does that tie in with how you started in content creation and more broadly your creative element? Can you take me back to the very beginning?
Yeah. So with content creation, I really just started streaming just because I thought it was fun. I didn't have any really big goals to start. It was just like, this is something people are doing and I really want to try it. So way back when, I actually started with playing League of Legends on stream when I
Let's
was quite
go.
young. I know League of Legends. And I just did it for fun, and then I eventually decided that I wanted to start streaming creatively and streaming in the creative category on Twitch. So this kind of links back to with content creation and art. Those two pieces kind of bridge together for me. Because with content creation and art, when you start as an artist, you might not be good. Like some people have somewhat of maybe some skill, but I was not really an amazing artist to start. So I decided to share that journey with streaming. So kind of stepping in with really not being that great at streaming, not really being that great at art, but my core philosophy and value was I just want to improve and I just want to get better at what I'm doing. So with that belief and that philosophy, that was a big part of what carried me forward in my journey. And a lot of the influences and people I looked up to always say, again, start before you're ready. And yeah, that's what I did, and that's how I got started.
How like much? I mean, how long has the creative spark been within you? How long does that trace back?
Oh man, ever since I was super little, when I was in 5th grade, I started drawing and doodling a lot and telling stories. I actually started writing. I remember I wrote like a 50-page chapter book about dragons and like different types of dragons, like sand dragons and mud, like not just your basic fire, earth, water, air, like elements. I did crazy elements. So it actually started for me as writing, which is strange because writing is not like really a huge piece of my work now. I went from like writing to art to content creation, but all of those pieces are implemented into content creation because content in making media is kind of a combination of all those things. I do writing for scripting. I do art like for my VTuber and my model, animating, graphic design for like thumbnails and stuff. So it started with writing, and I just picked up kind of a new creative spark through each chapter of my life. There was these little it was like collecting fragments until I created like the full gem, and then Syafire was born.
That's a nice way of doing it. Is just like you've got to collect all the little fragments, and then it's like, ooh, now I have the gem, and then I'm also gonna name myself after it because why not?
Yes, exactly. And I have this like little thing with my name too, that came to be, or the reason why I was named Syafire, going back to the idea of not having to be perfect, was we're all gems. We all shine uniquely and beautifully in our own way. We're all put under a lot of pressure. We have scratches and we have bruises, but we're all deserve to be here, and we're all different. Whether you're a ruby, a sapphire, an emerald. You're looking kind of like a quartz crystal over there with the white theme going on.
A little bit of purple.
Yeah, a little bit of purple.
The purple vein.
A dab of amethyst. Yeah. That's right.
I've got so many other like questions to ask, but I have to ask this first. How are you so boundlessly positive?
Oh man, it depends on the day. I think my positivity really comes from a love of life. Because I could just find beauty in everything, in the simplest things. And I think that goes back to the creative spark and being an artist. Like when I see a butterfly or a flower, I just get so excited about the world, and I imagine I have a really active imagination. So I think just really leaning in and listening to people, and also being really creative and being genuinely curious and having a core value of why are you the way you are? Why do you like the world, and why do you like looking at the world helps me be positive, because I'm genuinely very excited and curious to hear about life. I've always had a deep passion for why are we here? Why are we doing this? What are you doing? And why? And that roots all of my positivity. As well as some of the heavier thoughts and the harder thoughts as well, but I try to lean in to the altruistic side of it and say, I'm glad we get to be here. And yeah, it's just a core philosophy. And it's not always there. There's times and there's days where I really struggle with that, but especially when I am creating content, I try to remember there are so many people out there that just need that pick me up, or they just need a reason to work on something or to move forward. And that's also essentially you and any of my audience or people who have watched my content. I want to be and show up as my best self to show you that you can try to reach and be your best self.
Is that ultimately the reason why you got into the educational content and the tutorial videos?
Yeah, I think so because as I kind of mentioned earlier, I have a core philosophy of just being better. Learning and being educated really inspires me, and I really wanted to be able to give that to others because going back to like the motivation part and people, they know what they want to do, but they might not always be able to start for whatever reason.
Mm,
So I really focus on not just the educational part with my content, but the philosophical part and the psychological part, because I think for creatives especially, a lot of us get kind of bogged down by our psychology and wanting to start. So that I focus on that because those kind of main pillars, creativity, psychology, and philosophy, I feel like those three things really link together and resonate with creatives. And that's what I personally like a lot. So I try to preach that into my content to
mm,
inspire people and move them.
mm. I guess what made you start in VTubing proper? Like we've spoken a little bit about streaming, and I do want to loop back to the streaming element. And like we've spoken about creativity, but what about VTubing and getting started with there and kind of stumbling along the path yourself?
So the very first VTuber that I really was captured by was Code Miko. She is like an Unreal Engine, very realistic looking model, and she's a game developer. And I've always had a love for game development and art. And when I saw her model and how realistic the model can be, I just fell in love with the fascination and the idea of being able to be your own creation or be your character. So that started with Code Miko, and there's other little bits and pieces where it was sprinkled too. Before I became a VTuber on Twitch, I was messing with creating models on the game VR Chat, like making
Yep.
your own 3D models and being in full body virtual reality. And when I was messing with that, the very first model I made, when I hooked up all my full body virtual reality capture, so like I have tracking on my feet, my hands, my head, like my full body is in a virtual world as my character. The very first time I did that, I remember changing into my avatar and going to sit in front of a mirror. And I was looking at my creation in the mirror, and I literally just started like crying with happiness because I was like, I actually get to be my physical creation. I don't think many creators, or at least in the past, have really been able to embody that. Of course, you have acting and like being able to be a mascot, but being in virtual reality, that kind of really kickstarted and sparked my love for. I want to lean into being my character, into being my physical creation, and that leaned into VTubing. So
Mm.
that's kind of how all those pieces connected for me.
The identity part is quite powerful there, right? Like being able to discover a part of you that maybe you didn't know existed, or being able to reinforce something that you knew that did, but you couldn't necessarily capture in the real world, right?
Yeah, definitely. I this is so silly, but I've always wanted like super long hair, and I felt like I've never been able to grow my hair that long because I just don't even know if my hair can.
Yep.
And my VR chat model had long hair, and my main model here, Syafire, long hair. So
Yep.
that's a super simplified way to look at it, but that's the kind of stuff we can do with this technology.
I hate that I literally feel the same. I can't grow my hair out. Like I've tried. Like the longest I went without a haircut was like 6, 7 months. But like my hair is so thick, and then it's like I can't get it to like the length that's in my model. And so when I was like making my model, and I've got another design coming out soon that has even longer hair, I was like, I can do this as a VTuber now. I can finally have the long hair that I've been yearning for years.
I was gonna say you have to go through a long hair anime boy arc, please, and it's happening. It's happening. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yep.
I love that.
Soon. But yes,
Yeah.
that comment, like it just down to the hair, totally resonate with.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Someday, when we get full dive sword art virtual reality, we can all be VTubers even more.
I mean, if we're going through Sword Art Online lore, the game technically started last year. So like, we're already in that timeline now. Sword Art Online is real. Somewhere in the world it is real.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Beautiful.
We've spoken about a lot of these different directions like art, writing, modeling, game design, game development, etc. There is a lot of different parts to you, but how do you kind of classify yourself as a creator? And how do I like I guess identify in that way? Because it's one way to have the visual identity, but it's another to have like the purpose and that kind of identity around it.
Yeah, I think I've been trying to figure that. You're asking me a question I don't even know the answer to. I've been trying to figure this out for forever. Like, how do I even identify myself? And that's why I always go back to the umbrella term of just, I'm a creative person. Like, sometimes I'm really going to lean into making music. Sometimes I'm really going to lean into making game development. And man, it's really tough. I think I really started originally as identifying myself as an artist, as a drawer, because that's the huge pivoting point that helped me start streaming on Twitch and get into VTubing. And then I started becoming well known for VTubing. So then I classified myself as a content creator because I grew on YouTube. So I started as artist. Well, arguably started as writer if we're going to the deep lore. Writer,
All the way
artist,
back.
yeah, all the way back, right. And then VTuber. And now I kind of, for my identity, I kind of land in this space where I'm going through this like phase of I don't actually know anymore. It's almost like it's kind of, what is it, existential.
You're having
It's a
the
little
quarter
bit
life crisis.
existential. Yeah, 100%. But like the and I think all creatives go through this. I think creatives go through their own like existential crisis of like, what kind of creative am I? So that's what I'm trying to figure out right now. And once I did VTubing and everything grew with VTubing, now I had fallen into this thing of like, do I need to monetize and make like everything work? Is there a world where I am a full-blown out known for like being a musician and a singer, like a VTuber singer? Is there a world where I'm focusing on being an author and writing like 10 books? And now I feel myself pulled and kind of torn between all these pieces of like, which area I'm kind of waiting for this next phase to start. I'm kind of not waiting because I'm a person of action for sure. Like I'm always going to keep doing stuff and moving forward. But I almost think I've cluttered my creative battery up so much with so many little bits and pieces of everything. A little bit of writing, a little bit of music, a little bit of content that I'm like, I don't know, my soul is looking for something and yearning for not a change. Like, I don't know. There's just something where it's like, what is my next piece or my next chapter? Like, I wouldn't say I'm done with VTubing. I still really love VTubing, but is there a greater purpose for me as a creative? And I believe there is, and I always believed that since I was little. But when does it stop? Did I already hit it? Is becoming a VTuber with, 26,000 subscribers enough? Or is there a higher point where I should like reach 50,000 subscribers, or I have an arc where I decide I'm not going to be a YouTuber anymore. I'm going to go be a singer. And then I like start writing music. Like, I don't know. So that is a great question. My identity as a creative right now, that is something that I don't know if I should be like looking for it or letting it come to me or continuing doing what I'm doing, or opening my heart to have space for the new thing to arrive.
This is gonna, like, you answered it a little bit there, but this is gonna probably ponder the deep thinking even further. Do you feel like you would want to finesse a skill that you currently have more, or completely discover a new skill, bearing in mind that you have very few new skills that are actually cropping up that you could probably learn?
Yeah. Oh man. I don't know. I don't think there's a new skill that I haven't already thought of that I'm like, I really want to do, unless it's something like completely different, like archery or something, or like rock climbing. Which I always think about them. Like, what if I quit everything and I just go become a professional archer or something? I always think about stuff like that.
Yep.
But for my current skills I always go back to like music. Like I'd want to do more writing music because I feel like I'm able to share my deepest like emotions through writing lyrics, which goes back to the writing piece when I was little. And then music combined with some form of visual art, whether it's animation or like being like Sapphire performing on stage, like as like me not Code Miko, Hatsune Miku, but like yep. I know Hollow Live is doing stuff like that now too. So music would be it, but it's really strange because when I started playing guitar. I play a little guitar and piano. When I started that creative skill, because I was already sharing my art with the world and my writing in the world and content, I was like, you know what, music's gonna be the one thing that I just keep to myself. Like, I don't have to share this with anybody. I wanted to show myself that I could have a creative thing that I didn't have to prove to anybody. And then I ran into the question later of, do you feel like it's your purpose, or do you think there's a greater force out there that it is your purpose to share with the world a piece of art that could change someone's life? Like, do we have the responsibility? Do creatives have the responsibility to create something so that it can better someone else's life? And that really made me re-challenge and rethink, should I keep my music to myself, or is that something I'd want to dive deeper into and share with the world?
I feel like this whole altruism kind of reigns through with all your content. Like you mentioned it earlier, but like, and to bring it back, because I can't believe we've gone 20 minutes without me explicitly asking a question about the tutorial videos. But like, we've spoken a little bit about like the why that you got into it, and kind of like the how and the journey of like just wanting to kind of showcase your own journey and your own path for people who will be following in your footsteps later. But I guess, what is that validation like to have off the back of the tutorial content and seeing the comments and the recognition of, hey, I got into VTubing and I learned all this stuff thanks to Syafire's videos?
Oh my god. Man, you're bringing out the tears. I am like so thankful. I'm still in disbelief every time like I'll have people reach out to me and like send emails, or people DM me on Discord, or I just even rating someone's stream. They're like, "Oh, Syafire, watch your tutorials," and like hearing their live reaction. Yep. I've gotten a myriad of different ways people have thanked me. Whether it was written, a handmade gift they sent me. I've had everything from under the sun. And I am in disbelief all the time, and I am so grateful that people are, now my work is ricocheting into them to be able to create their dreams, whether that's making music as a VTuber for them, or like you're doing, interviewing creators and writing and figuring out about their stories and being a journalist. Like, watching my creativity be able to support people and extending their creativity. I don't even think there's a word for it. It makes me so happy.
And I guess on a more personal sense, how does it feel to have this documentation of your own journey that you can look back on through the tutorials itself? Like, how do you reflect on that journey?
Oh man, it depends on the day. Some days I'm like really thankful to have the documentation, everything I just explained, and then there's the darker end of it. Or other days, I look back and it's like I feel like I always have to top myself. That's where this like panic or existentialism comes from, of like, what do I have to do next? Like, I already helped all these people. Is that enough? Or do I need to keep going? And that documentation is going to be out there for a long time to come to help people. But now it's like, is there a greater purpose for me to serve? And where does that go? So it's a mix of both. I'm very thankful, and I hope that, you know, someday if I have like kids, or just anyone who decides, not even just kids, like anybody who decides they want to VTube can look up to my work and see that and just continue to use it for a long time.
I know we've touched on the identity bit a little bit, but a lot of the people will know you as just the tutorial person and that kind of thing, even though you are a much bigger creative. How do you kind of reconcile that difference between your own perception of your work and the community's perception of your work, and kind of wanting to be known as something else and something a little bit bigger than just, hey, I do tutorials on YouTube for VTubing?
Well, I think live streaming helps a lot, because when people come out to my live stream, they can understand the deeper part of me. They get to have that deeper connection, and ask me questions and learn. I even have people come to my stream sometimes that are like, hey, I didn't know you were an artist. And I'm like, dude, that's like everything that I do. And I didn't even realize how deep the tunnel goes for people just thinking like I'm just a VTuber tutorial person. So I get a little bit of that break when people stop by my live stream, because then I'm able to really connect with them and share that deeper part of myself. But from a bigger level and like moving forward through that, I've been wanting to find deeply a way to connect with people and show people that I am more than just a tutorial person, and how can I share the next level of creativity with the world, whether that's like an animated film, a manga, working on music videos, expressing my feelings, or something like that.
Yeah.
Would be the next step. But there's a micro level of it that goes on with live streaming.
Did that kind of exacerbate the crisis that you were having?
Did what specifically?
Like the whole idea that people just see me as the tutorial person.
Man, I didn't even have that issue actually because when I started, I was just like, I want to become the best artist ever and work at a game studio.
Yep.
And then my thought was, to work at a game studio, I need to do something that most people don't do. I'm going to start a YouTube channel and create a portfolio to get started at a game channel.
Yep.
And then my channel grew. And then I was like, oh my gosh, what? Like, I didn't plan on that happening. So I actually think this whole thing was born because of my YouTube channel. And then it leads me at asking the question, what should my YouTube channel have been there to start this whole thing? Or what? It can be so dark. Like, or
you can get so far into your head here. Like you can really dive down and get so far into your head. But at the end of the day, what's happened, right?
Exactly. And I've tried to lean more into, because I get lost down that and I overthink a lot. I try to lean into that now. Bro, I'm just making good videos to help people, and I'm going to keep creating what I love. And that helps me more. So I'm trying to lean into that a little bit more as of lately.
Before we go, I did mention at the top that I wanted to bring like your family into the equation a little bit, because you told me a very interesting story about your brother earlier, about how he got you into streaming. What kind of happened there?
Yeah, so he initially he loved like building computers, and he was a very technological person, and he's the one that kind of like watched a lot of Twitch. He loved Tim the Tap Man, and he's like, yo, you should try live streaming. I think you would really love it. And I was like, okay. And I didn't have like a good computer at the time, so I used his computer, and that kind of sparked my whole understanding of like the internet culture of streaming, and later led to me streaming my art stuff and going down that direction. So the strange part about it is he ended up taking a completely different path, where he started to isolate himself from all like technology, and like he thinks technology is like not evil, but just like he's a very independent person now, with like homesteading and doing everything for himself, and trying to stay completely disconnected from the internet. So that made it really hard, because he was a big influence and a big inspiration for me, and to not really be able to share this like whole thing that happened with YouTube with him, and like feel like he can understand it and like get it without getting that backlash of like the internet's evil like type thing, is tough, because he was a big inspiration. And I felt that about both of my brothers, well, mostly my older, but I just felt like I haven't been able to share my passion very much with the two people that are closest to me, like blood related. And that can feel very isolating sometimes. And I think that's what has led to a lot of the existentialism and the I'm different and I should like do something greater. Yeah.
Where does that support then come from now? Like, where do you find that kind of camaraderie and like understanding of your work?
Honestly, it comes from the community on Twitch and on YouTube. Like Twitch, everyone on Twitch, yo, shout out to my homies. You guys are amazing, because all the messages that I mentioned earlier when you were asking me about how I've seen my impact, those people really kept me going. It was like, even if I do feel isolated or I do feel really lonely, and all the people on Twitch that have supported me, and all the kind words they've said, and on my YouTube channel, the comments and the emails I've gotten, that is where I find my support. And then also with creators like yourself, like being able to do this and have this opportunity with you right here, right now. We both understand what it's about. we both get it, and being able to share this conversation, I feel so supported in my work. To be able to just have the honor to have this interview with you.
Well, thank you. It's a very
Yeah.
it's a very sweet point.
No, you.
To kind of wrap things up, you mentioned that you don't know how long you're going to keep VTubing. You've got these other interests and all that kind of stuff. Do you see yourself fleeting back in and out of the creative space wherever it kind of takes you and just going with the flow wherever your life is, but always remaining a creative?
I do. I don't know what it looks like moving forward 100%. But all I know is that I want to keep creating things that are important to me, because when I started VTubing, the reason I made the video is because I loved the idea of VTubing and I thought it was beautiful. And I think if I can find a way to continue leaning into the next thing that I find beautiful, as it was VTubing once, if I can find a way to lean into whatever that is next for me, then and continue to do that and not get too stuck in one area. But also it's okay to get like in that area every once in a while. That I'll be able to continue to live a creative life and be happy about that and be happy with where I am right now and what I'm creating right now.
Well, Syafire, I hope that people come out of this with an understanding that no, you're not just a tutorial person, and there's a lot more to you and your character and all that you've done. So, thank you so much for coming on to Behind the Mole and sharing your story. It's been lovely to have you.
Thank you so much. You had so many amazing questions. I'm honored to be here, and I just really admire your insight. Thank you.
Syafire is the latest guest on my series Behind the Model, diving into the stars who make VTubing the creative medium we love. If you're interested in more of Syafire's story, you can read the accompanying article linked in the description. You can also find all of her social media channels below. If you liked this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like down there in the description, and leave any feedback in the comments if you have any. I read it all. Until next time, thank you.